Hello, VLA students. It's Mrs. Likins here, and today I am talking to you about lease agreements and rental agreements. This is part of our Financial Independence series. A lease or rental agreement is a legal contract between a tenant, who is the person who is going to lease or rent, and the owner or management company. Often, if you're renting a home, it is from another person. Sometimes when you're in an apartment or an apartment complex, it's from a management company. And they may be based out of somewhere else, but have a local person who comes and checks on it, or has a maintenance supervisor or a building manager or complex manager. These are all necessary if you're renting a room, a house, a mobile home, an apartment, or some other place that would be considered a dwelling that you can live in. The state requires it. Nobody can hold you if you just have a verbal agreement. They can't hold you legally accountable, and you cannot hold them legally accountable if anything was to happen. Reputable rentals have one that conforms to state and city laws. Often when you move from one apartment complex, say in Port Huron, to one in Marine City, the city may have additional requirements or laws that, from city to city. The state has some that are pretty basic, that are across the board. City ones may be, or township maybe have other things added to it. The rental agreements and lease agreements are any kind of good rental or lease, they will be inspected, maintained, kept current. Appliances, flooring, plumbing, electrical, air and heat, those things may be changed out often. Every 5 years, I think, is kind of the common thing. And rental or lease agreements are for a specified period of time. You may sign a rental agreement to live somewhere for 6 months, or 1 year, or 2 years, or it may be a month-to-month rental agreement. Lease agreements tend to be longer term, where rental tend to be what they would consider a short term, which would be month-to-month, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Anything over that would be considered more of a lease. Often you will find lease to own, which would be a rent to own. So you make a larger payment, and part of that goes towards a security deposit or a down payment on the piece of property, or the home or mobile home that you're living in. This a lease or rental agreement requires the tenant to uphold their end of the agreement, and it holds the landlord accountable for anything that they've agreed to. So if you've signed a 6-month agreement, you can't leave after 4 months and say, I'm not paying you for the last 2. No, you are held accountable for those last 2 months, unless you can find somebody else to fill in, and then you would have to get a different type of agreement and let the rental property owners know. What you should look for in a lease or rental agreement. It's going to specify who the landlord is, the owner, or the manager, or maybe all three. Maybe they're all different. It will specify the specific address. So you may live at 123 Main Street, and it should specify exactly the apartment, or if it's a mobile home, the lot number, something along those lines. It will specify what your rent is, and if there are any additional fees, maybe for pets, maybe for cleaning, late fees, those kinds of things. It'll specify exactly when rent is due. Maybe it's the 22nd of every month, or the 15th, or the 1st, or the last. It'll specify exactly when rent is due. It'll also specify if you move in on the 15th but rent is due on the 1st, it will prorate, which is it'll change it to the amount of days you're actually living in that place, who to pay the rent to, and what is accepted for payment. So I would never recommend paying cash for rent because then you don't have anything, you don't have any proof. Use it'll say check, it'll say credit card, which I think would be kind of hard to do, but it's possible. It may say cash, it may say cashier's check or something along those lines, but try and make sure that any kind of payment you have proof that you've paid it, so nobody can say you didn't pay your rent or when you paid it. A rental agreement will specify your security deposit. It'll specify any information on pets. You may not be able to have a dog over 15 pounds. You may only be able to have one dog, 2 cats. It'll specify what number and the types of animals. I've seen rental agreements that say no reptiles, no snakes. Cats are acceptable, dogs are not. So you'll need to look at that and have that specified for what your needs will be. Who is responsible for which utilities? Utilities are electric, gas, water, cable, internet, those kinds of things. So you may get into an apartment where the electric is included, but you need to pay for your own cable and internet. Or your water and electric is paid for and you still need to come up with cable and internet. What amenities may be included? Washer, dryer in the apartment, or maybe you have access to a laundry facility there on the grounds. If there's a pool or playground, maybe there's a community center, a garage, parking, extra storage, carport, a specific parking spot. Those things will all be in your lease agreement as well. And any information on lead-based paint. If it was before 1976, it has to say that there's lead-based paint, but all lead-based paint has been painted over and sealed up, so you aren't exposed to that. So those are things that you'll find in a basic everyday lease or rental agreement. Michigan also requires on top of that the security deposits are limited to 1.5 months rent. So if your rent is $500, your security deposit should never exceed more than $750. And a security deposit is something that you would get back if there isn't anything wrong with the apartment, no major fixes that need to be done, or if you don't show up, you don't pay for the last month and they just keep that. You wouldn't get any money back. The landlord is required to tell you where the security deposit is being held, which bank it will be at. If ownership changes, they are required to give you 30 days notice. That doesn't mean that you have 30 days to get out. They just need to tell you, I'm selling the house to so-and-so, and these are your 30 days notice that the ownership is going to change. And then if anything changes in your lease, they need to give you that information. Rent cannot change during the duration of the original lease, according to Michigan law. So if you've got an agreement for 1 year, in that year they cannot change your rent. They cannot drop it and they cannot increase it. Michigan requires that the number of days a person who is not on the lease can stay for a month or year. So each agreement would specify that maybe you can have a friend stay there 10 days a month or 200 days out of the year. Other than that, then they need to be put on the lease agreement, or you have voided that lease and then they can take legal action against you. And Michigan requires that the tenant is given the information about the process of eviction. Eviction is the forcible removal of you from the property for any number of reasons that would be in the agreement. What you need for renting. So when you show up and you found the place that you want to rent, you will need to have a driver's license or other formal picture identification. Maybe it's a state ID, maybe it's a work identification, something along those lines. Proof of a bank account. They will do a credit check. Sometimes they will do a background check. Sometimes you might need somebody to come in and co-sign with you. You will need proof of income, and if you have applied for Section 8, you will need to have the application and approval. And Section 8 is it helps you pay your rent and bills so that you have a safe place to live. It's something that you would get through DHS. What to look for and ask about. Ask about how old the flooring is and when they plan to change it next. Ask about what happens if you have a leak or there's some kind of maintenance that needs to be done. Who do you contact? Who's responsible for that? So if there's a leak in the faucet, who's responsible to fix it? You or the landlord? Who's supposed to do that kind of thing? Can you put pictures on the wall? A lot of times they'll say you can put pictures on the walls, but you can't put holes in the wall. Can you make any cosmetic changes? Can you paint? Can you add curtains? Can you hang a TV? Those kinds of things that can be all changed at a later date. Find out if those are things that you can do. Ask about how old the appliances are and when they plan to switch them out. Who takes care of pests? Will they spray for bugs? Will they trap mice near the garbage? Those kinds of things. Are you allowed to grill if you have a patio or a deck? Are you allowed to have a grill? What kind of grill? Who to call if building maintenance is not being upheld. So you show up and you've got ants and you've asked them to spray for ants and they haven't done it. Who do you contact to hold the landlord accountable for their end of the agreement? What happens if you lose your income source for a short period of time, for maybe a month or 2 weeks, and you're going to be short on rent? Or is there some kind of something that you can do to have help during that time? Look at the condition of the building, any kind of lighting in the parking area, lighting near the front door. Is the grass, the shrubs, the trees, are those well maintained? Is the paint peeling? You want to make sure that you're moving into a place that's going to be safe and clean, and that you feel safe in, and that you feel comfortable being there. Is there security cameras? Is there security? On top of it all, do you feel safe? I know that's a lot of information, but when you are renting or looking to rent, these are all things that you need to think about. I will be back again next week with another installment of what to do to become more financially independent. Have a great day.